Plaza de la Victoria es un centro social. Tu avenida Pedro Mon, como tú no hay otra igual. Mas yo quisiera cantarles con todito el corazón.
So this is the beginning of the journey in Santiago, Chile. And we went up to the top of this mountain right in the middle of the city on a tram. One goes up and one comes down. And they have some religious statues of Christ up at the top that we took a look at. This is a view of the overall city. The place is huge. The city is just really gigantic and just sprawls out on both sides of this mountain forever. And there's a shot of the religious statue. Some religious symbols. I think people just left here for some reason. This was a tram that we took across the mountain to another section of the mountain and just saw the overall city. Now we went to this place, which is almost like the White House in Chile. They have guards outside and horses and security. That was kind of cool to see. And it was nice to just walk around and take pictures where you can. Here's a guy on his horse looking at his phone. I don't think he's working. He's getting a hit of dopamine, but he should be working, not on his phone. Here's a local kind of, I guess I'd call them a convenience store in Chile. And we took a lot of time running the underground subway system. Here and there, it was easy to use and easy to get from place to place. It was well marked, and there was always people there willing to help you. We're coming up to the pool on the top of the building where we stayed for a few nights in Santiago. It was a beautiful view of the city and a nice hotel. Then we went ahead and took a tour, and our first stop was a winery, and it was beautiful there. This was on the way to San Antonio, which is where we were going to take the boat, and they had a wine tasting, which I know nothing about, and then I spent my time walking around the farm, just looking at the insects, and this was a cool bee on a sunflower here, and it was a pretty place. They had animals, they had llamas, they had tons of grapes around everywhere, and this is a part of the valley that they grow grapes and make wine. Okay, next up was the Valparaiso, Chile. This was still on the way to San Antonio, and it was a beautiful city that had lots of art. Of course, I got the bicycle there since I love bikes, but it overlooked the ocean, and there were different artists that were everywhere that kind of marked their territory. And a lot of the owners of these buildings encouraged or even commissioned the artists to go ahead and create art on some of the buildings. This right here was one of my favorite buildings. The art was just magnificent. I mean, the details in this lady's / girl's face, it looked so real, it almost looked like a photograph. So this particular artist was one of my favorite that I saw on this side of the buildings here. And then there's this car that had a little art going on with it also. I thought that was interesting. I don't know how he or she sees out the window, but it was there. And here's some views of the city. As you can see, it overlooks the ocean. A lot of dogs around the city, but the residents kind of take care of the dogs, and they're all well maintained and that type of thing. So it was a great city to see and walk around. Here's some steps that kind of signify a look of a piano. That is a real kind of special spot in the city. There's Karina at the very top of the city, taking it all in. You could tell there was a different vibe in the city It was smaller than Santiago. People were very nice. It was safe. You didn't worry about your bags. Here's a girl sliding down a slide that they have there in the city. And it was a nice city. All right, we got onto the ship, and here's a whole bunch of potatoes and some other types of food getting ready for the ship. This is a cool little Mexican restaurant on the ship, and I just was enjoying the skulls on the side of the wall there. All right, Coquimbo. This was our first stop in Chile. This was a small little island that had this, it wasn't an island, I'm sorry. It was a place with this gigantic cross just off the coast there. Next stop was Arica. Now in Arica, Chile, we spent, I don't know that we should have spent this long doing this, but we spent 2.5 hours one way to get up to see this volcano that just had snow on it. Now, what was interesting about this trip is we went from sea level to about 14,333 feet. So we were way up there. We went from warm hotness to it was super kind of cold up here. But it was fun to see the roads, the desert, and how the desert started to change and see the vegetation. It was a long day. I mean, it was a 5-hour drive there and back. But I would say it was worth it. I mean, look at that volcano with snow on it. It's just beautiful. The roads were tiny. The roads were small. There was a lot of dirt roads with construction. So part of the excitement was just taking the ride there and watching our driver drive as best as he could and as fast as he could with the current conditions. It was unique for sure. We're getting back here to the city of Arica. Now, where we went by the volcano, we were almost on the border of Bolivia, and so it was a pretty good drive. So now we're back into the city of Arica. These houses over here, these shanties, they're almost like favelas where people are just living in shacks that were made by plywood. These houses here, right here, are a little nicer, but you know, like anywhere in third world countries, there's a lot of poverty and there's a few people that are very wealthy, and the middle class is few and in between. This was kind of I would call this an outdoor museum that they do from the Indians worship some things here. I don't have the details because we just kind of stopped real quick and shot some footage of these places, but they were beautiful. And you can see here the desert is just everywhere. There's nothing growing. It was a unique vibe. It was almost like being on the moon. But these gigantic statues that just erected themselves from the desert, or someone made them obviously, were beautiful to see. All right, on our way back to the boat, we stopped at the beach. And here at the beach was all the local people hanging out. Then we obviously jumped back on the boat, and one of my favorite things to do is to walk. So I took a lot of time doing circles and looking at the ocean and thinking, it's just super fun. Really enjoyed spending the time walking every day around there and just taking in the ocean. It was beautiful. So next stop is Peru. And we're now done with Chile, and we are in Pisco, Peru. And we kind of like these little not traffic things, but taxis that were around everywhere. And then we went to this desert. Now this was a sandy desert. And what was cool about this desert is you got to get onto these dune buggies and run around the desert. And they didn't mess around. They went fast, and you needed to hold on for dear life. So it was almost like going on a roller coaster ride. I don't think everybody would enjoy that. If you didn't enjoy some adventure and fear, you probably would not think this was that fun. But I thought it was super fun and amazing. Talk about nothing growing anywhere. There was no vegetation, no plants, nothing near. no vegetation near this place. It was just a full-on desert. Then we went ahead and stopped, and we got on some snowboards that we kind of sledded down the mountains on the sand down, and it was super fun and super fast. It was almost like being on the snow, and we spent some time doing that, which I really enjoyed. So one cool thing about this area is that it had this oasis in the desert. So you can see here's this little lake and water supply with some homes and some businesses. And this was just cool. I saw pictures of this before we went on the trip and was really hoping to see it. And then by accident, we just kind of ended up here. And I just couldn't get enough of this oasis in the desert. And we're gonna walk down to it in a minute, and I'll show you some footage of the lake close up. So here's the lake close up. There are a lot of animals as far as birds and that type of thing flying around here. There's places to eat. You could rent a little boat and kayak across the river. Here's a little bird that I thought was really cool with the red on his head. But this was a real cool place to see. I've never seen anything like this. And then we're back on the road with these taxis that were there. Before we ended up getting back to the ship, we went to this national park that was on the ocean, and just some beautiful shots of the ocean off this national park here. I will tell you, this day we were here and being on the coast, it was just super windy. I mean, the wind was blowing us around like crazy. Now this here is the red beach. You can see the dark red sand, and it was really cool because when you got down and got close to that sand, it was super red. You can see how barren everything is. I mean, there's nothing out here. No shade, nothing, just straight sun. Here's another shot of the red beach, which was really cool to see. All right, so next stop is Lima, Peru, a gigantic city, a big city with a lot going on. And this was a park that we went to go see. It's kind of the love park. They had a lot of statues and items that were relating to love and romance. And then we stopped by an Indian market, and we didn't shop, but we sure looked. No room to take anything anywhere. So it was a fun place to stop, but time to move on. All right, then we're moving on to Trujillo. I'll get it right here, Peru. And let me just be quiet while these girls dance. These girls greeted us right as we left the boat. And then there was these two little kids that were amazing dancers, as you can see here. Look at this little boy, he's on fire. This was a Indian ruins. I cannot remember how many years old this was, something like 400 years old, super old, and that they recovered. Then we moved on to the city square, which was beautiful, and a lot of people hanging out and just looking at the city, taking it all in. I always like to watch the vendors there and the people that are actually from the country. I saw this lady, and look at the size of those avocados. I don't know what those other green things are, but those avocados are huge. Back to the beach here, and these were all locals. They were local people just enjoying the beach. And they make these, I'd call them a kayak / boat that they actually use for fishing in the mornings. And here's the boat. Back to the Norwegian sun. One of the chefs did some carving here out of the fruits. Those are always amazing. All right, next stop, Manta, Ecuador. Really excited to see Ecuador. I know Ecuador has had some troubles recently, but we made it back alive. We're here in the jungle looking for animals. We had some friends we met on the boat that were actually getting a hat painted. This lady loved to buy hats. Here's some vultures. These vultures are outside of the fish market. We'll see in a moment. Here's some trash. I didn't take a lot of pictures of the trash, but there was tons of trash in all these countries, which was sad to see. Here's the local fish market, and it smelled like fish. But boy, was it cool to see. This guy was looking for an opportunity to eat something that someone dropped on the floor. He was hanging out there, but here's some big shrimps. And then coming up after the shrimp over there on the right, you see some octopus, maybe some squid. And it was fresh, and you can smell it. Here they were building a boat outside. This is a pretty big boat that you can see the skeleton in the first stages of building the boat here. Now here's the fisheries on the dock next to where we were docked, tuna. They are the largest tuna export in the world here in Manta, Ecuador. This is a line to get back on the boat. Now, if you don't like lines, don't go on a cruise. It went pretty fast, though. I mean, I teased. There really wasn't that many lines. But as we were back on the boat, I got to watch the tuna ships do their business. It's a huge business. You can see this gentleman here's got a helicopter on his boat. I think he's doing pretty well fishing for tuna. And these boats are just gigantic. It's a full-on business. So to watch it from a business standpoint was pretty cool and amazing. I spent probably an hour or so just watching these guys do what they do. And they would take the tuna out of the boat and then load it into these trucks. And there's two types of tuna. These are the larger tuna that you see here, and then there's a smaller tuna. Which I found interesting is that these guys were getting off work. It was the end of the day at this time. And then if security would actually search them and pat them down and check everything once they were leaving the boat, which I thought was interesting. So I guess they didn't want them to take things off the boat. I noticed too, anybody who wanted it got a large tuna to take home to their family. But you can see here's some guys getting off the boat, some workers, and they're patting them down and making sure, I guess, they didn't, I don't know what they're going to steal off the boat, but I'm sure there's a reason for it. Maybe they're making sure that there's no drug paraphernalia coming out here also. I don't know, but that was interesting. You usually get searched going onto the boat, but here you get searched getting off the boat. All right, on to Panama City. Look at those ants. There are all kinds of bugs in the jungle in Panama, and these are really cool to watch. This was at the top of a tower, kind of overlooking Panama, And Panama is very lush and very jungle-ish, if you will. Here's some plants that I'd call indoor plants that were growing outdoors like crazy. Then we went ahead and went to this area. It's called the Gamboa Experience. They have, actually, it was really cool. They had tons of mountain biking here, which we didn't do, but they had a lot of mountain biking going on. They had a tram ride. They had a butterfly pavilion. And here are a few of the butterflies that we saw inside the pavilion. Some of these butterflies would come up and land on your hat or land on the side of your shoulder, and you could really see a good look at them. Here is a sloth at the sanctuary. He's scratching his head and just slothing around doing what he does. I think he had a slow day. This is the tide is out here in Panama City, and I just took a shot of that. And here's the new city. The new city is very big, a lot of commerce, a lot of buildings, as you can see. It is a gigantic city. All right, now we're on to the Panama Canal. This boat was small enough that we were able to go through the older locks. And as you can see on these older locks, they actually have these trains with cables. And these cables do not pull the boat through the canal or through the locks. They just keep them centered from side to side. And on this side, on the smaller side of the locks, the gates close. You can see how they close here as they hinge and they're going to close shut. On the newer locks, there's actually a wall that comes out, or a gate that comes out the side of the wall and goes straight in. But these locks are a little different, and they were interesting to see. In the past, I have seen we have gone through the newer locks, but these were the older locks, and I was excited to see these. There's a lot goes on. It took about a full day to get through the one side of the locks, and then we enter the lake and then go to the other side and go down and get out of the locks. And you can see the elevation change here by the trains. This is how they're lifting us up the locks. The trains are just going back to catch a new ship. Boy, you can see how close they get to the side. There was actually a point where I actually touched the side of the wall. I had to do it, and I did it. It was really cool. Again, these trains are not on the new locks. They're just on the older locks. On the newer locks, they actually use a tugboat on the front and back to tow and push them through the locks. And on this side, the propeller of the boat is actually moving them through the locks, and the train and the cables are just guiding them. There's a human being in each of these trains, and they're always tightening and loosening the cables. There's actually, I think, like 17 people that got on board the ship just to monitor it as we went through the locks. So this is a big deal. You can Google it, because depending on you're watching this, it's going to change. But it's hundreds of thousands of dollars to get boats through the canal. But it's obviously must be worth it for them, because a lot of people are doing it to save time and to get through the canal. So it's a huge deal. It's Panama's largest source of income behind tourism. So they have a lot of money they make from this canal. This right here is the Panama Bridge, which goes all the way now up to Central America. So it's a pretty popular bridge, and it used to not be here, and there wasn't a great way to get up there. But now, with this highway, it's a great way to get to Central America from Panama. I love seeing these shipping ships and all these containers. I wonder how many containers are on there. I think if you start to divide the price of going through the canal by each container, it's probably not that much to move cargo through the canal, which makes a lot of sense. The canal is very busy. There on the right, you can see this was a chemical ship, and they look so different than a cruise ship and a cargo ship. They just have pipes and a way to transport liquids. It's amazing everything that's transported by boat. And here's the shot of coming out of the canal and going to start heading into the Caribbean side. Well, welcome to Cartagena, Colombia. This is one of my favorite stops because when you get off the ship, they have this nice area of wildlife. And I like taking pictures, and I like taking pictures of wildlife, so it was super nice. They had a whole bunch of type of birds there, macaws, they had an anteater, they have flamingos, they have sloths, turtles, anything you can think of. This is a tree that I was just fascinated with on the property. I think everybody else wanted to move on, but I really enjoyed watching and taking pictures of all the animals. This little guy is on his way somewhere fast. The birds are pretty tame also. Some people were touching them and petting them, and they allowed that. Oh yes, I forgot there were monkeys on the property here as you got off the boat, and they'll take anything off you, so be careful. Here's a baby sloth, 3 months old. He was super cute. I couldn't gather from what the guy was saying in Spanish what happened to him or why he was there, but he was a cutie. Look at those nails on his arms and legs. This is a top view of Cartagena. Again, a very large, big city. And this is the newer part of Cartagena. It also has an older section. This is a monastery at the top of the hill that overlooks Cartagena that we were visiting. Again, just a big city, a lot of people there and a lot of things going on. Here's a fort that's in Cartagena. This is one of their largest forts that used to be in service at one time. And we always stopped there. We didn't go in and look at it because of the limited time we had, but this is right in the middle of the city, right next to the ocean, that was used to protect that area years ago. I always get a kick out of all the vendors. In Colombia in particular, they're super aggressive, and I don't mind that. I'm more fascinated by it than anything else. So I love seeing the vendors. I love their process and how they try to solicit you to make money. It's fascinating to me, so I actually enjoy their aggressiveness and watching them work. Right now we're into the old part of Cartagena, Colombia. You can see it has a different look. It's actually super beautiful. Kind of reminds me of maybe parts of Louisiana. It's very colorful, it's very historic. There's a lot of plants hanging off the side of the buildings, and a lot of colorful people and a lot going on. Cutting is getting some, is that mango or papaya? That looks like papaya. Here's a bakery that has a lot of fresh goods where we spent some time eating. Again, you can see the colors of the buildings are vibrant, bright. Cartagena is really a beautiful place, and anything could happen to you anywhere, but felt very safe. Walked around with my camera. This was one of the few places where I took out my camera and walked around and felt very comfortable with having it out. So we're on our way back to the ship, and again we had to walk through the kind of animal retreat one more time. I don't know what keeps these birds and animals here, because a lot of them are not caged. They're just wandering around so they can just fly wherever they want, but I assume they just like it here. And that concludes the end of Cartagena and the end of the trip. I hope you enjoyed it, and get out there and live your life, and I hope that you adventure often because it's a lot of fun.